Thank you so much. I want to bring in two former FBI agents, Brianna Fox, now an associate professor at the University of South Florida. Also with us, Josh Campbell, who is, of course, now a CNN senior correspondent. Josh, first, I want to ask you about this last image that appears to be different from the others. It is harder to make out the backpack or the gun in this image. What stands out to you?
Well, in these images in the video, we don't actually get timestamps, so we can't see exactly when each one was taken. But as you made reference to, there was one image that the FBI released where you see this individual who's coming up there to the porch. You don't see the firearm, you don't see the backpack that's on them. And so what that could suggest is that, again, we don't know what the motive was. There's so much that we don't know about this case right now. But if they had made some kind of approach to that home in an effort to try to gather details about what was happening there, obviously you'd be presented less of a threat, rather than walking up with a firearm that's clearly presented there at your waist. But again, we don't know the specific timeline, but that is notable. I mean, I will tell you the fact that you see the person then come up, to the camera and didn't have anything to cover it up, maybe suggests that there wasn't a lot of, reconnaissance going into this. But certainly these images are critical. Yeah. It's chilling, but authorities hope that this could lead to the big break.
Yeah, there's so much we still don't know about this, and yet we know infinitely more now than we did when we woke up this morning. Brianna, what do you take away from these images? What strikes you about the demeanor, the build, the gait, about this person?
Right. The biggest thing is how he almost saunters up like that's his house. The lack of concern that he's going to be caught. I did my PhD on burglary, and one of the biggest things they said is trying not to get caught in those first few moments entering and exiting is the biggest thing that they're aware constantly on their mind. The other thing is now we have a for sure timestamp of about 1:47 a.m. is when he arrived, and Nancy's pacemaker disconnected around 2:28. So that's 40 minutes that is unaccounted for. That is a huge amount of time. That is so dangerous for somebody who's trying to commit a crime to get away with it for 40 minutes. So I just, as he's picking up leaves and trying to put it on the camera, he didn't come prepared for that, but he still has this kind of air of bravado, like he's going to be able to get away with this.
And Josh, the fact that there's only one person in these images, do you think it's likely that this person was acting alone?
I think we just don't know right now. I mean, we have seen kidnappings that were done by one person, some done by other people. I heard one former law enforcement person speculating this looks like a very sophisticated group. I don't think we know any of that. What we do know right now is based on, as you mentioned, the imagery. We can see this one individual that is armed. You look at everything about this person, with the ski mask down to the firearm. I mean, there's no non-sinister reason someone would be approaching a residence like this at this hour. But authorities are continuing to crowdsource. They're asking for information. One thing I will predict, Jake, is I don't think if we continue to hear silence from law enforcement after this, I don't think we should read into that too much and think, well, that means that they're not getting anywhere. It could be quite the opposite. If in fact someone does come forward and says, I know who this person is, they help authorities identify them, that's not something authorities would try to announce until they safely have that person in custody. So we're in this waiting period to see if these tips are actually fruitful.
Yeah, the Pima County Sheriff's Office told me that since this broke, they've received a huge uptick in calls since the news, and investigators are combing through leads. So this is bringing public interest and public response. Brianna, it's clear, obviously, the person tampered with the camera. We know the camera was missing. Do you have any theories about what was being attempted with the use of the plant there, where they came unprepared to block the image of the camera? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly that. Kids that I know were arrested for vandalism come with spray paint, to block off the cameras. So I'm just shocked that that wasn't part of this person's thought process. If it's as premeditated as it appears, the balaclava, the firearm. I mean, this is somebody who almost has this, again, like air of bravado, but really doesn't know what they're doing. So that does help you kind of limit down what you're looking for. The other thing I would say is that firearm being put in the waistband. I'm sure Josh would tell us from our training in the academy, you would never do that. The risk of an accidental discharge is so great in such a bad location. So that tells us it's probably not law enforcement or military involved. No training like that.
Josh, the person in the video concealing his or her identity with a mask, with gloves, with unmarked clothing, no brand on the backpack. But images that were less clear than this have helped break open past cases. The United Healthcare CEO, Charlie Kirk. What do you think is still recognizable about this person in the video that might alert some people out there who are watching and think they might know who this person is?
Well, this video is so rich. And Jake, when you first reported earlier today for us that we were expecting something from the FBI, some type of imagery, there was this big question, well, how clear is that actually going to be? We've seen CCTV footage in cases just get a glimpse, a profile shot of someone who might be walking by the camera. Here you can see full on, this individual. And just because this person is wearing a mask doesn't mean that there's not someone out there who will say, well, you know what, I think that I know who that person is based on the gait of this individual, as Brianna was saying, based on some of the other traits. If this was someone who had acquired this clothing ahead of time, maybe even for the sole purpose of just committing this one act, did someone else see that? And so there are little clues that may not stand out, alone. But if there's someone who might recognize something about them, authorities are hoping that they'll be able to piece all those together. And the last thing I'll say, Jake, is that going on behind the scenes, and Brianna knows this from all our investigations as well. Authorities are working behind the scenes on things that they're not going to release, and that includes trying to find out where every item that person had on him was purchased. Where was the backpack purchased? Where was the mask and the clothing? Because we've seen in so many cases in the past, authorities able to go to the store where something was purchased, talk to an employee, canvass, and then get financial records from the actual point of sale. It's hard work. I don't want to make it sound like it's not. It's tedious, but we've seen that be fruitful in past cases. The hope is that could be the same here.
Brianna Fox and Josh Campbell, thanks to both of you for your expertise. Really appreciate it. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie or the person in these new photos and videos, if you think you know who that might be, there are multiple ways to alert authorities, and you can do so anonymously. Call the Pima County Sheriff's Department, 520-351-4900. So we're back live outside the Pima County Sheriff's Office in Tucson, Arizona, with breaking news on day 10 of the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, a search that has gripped the nation. She is obviously the mother of NBC News Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. Today, the FBI released 6 still photos and 3 videos of a masked and armed intruder outside Nancy Guthrie's front porch early in the morning. She disappeared on February 1st. I want to bring in CNN's Brian Stelter and CNN's Brian Todd. Stelter, to you first. You're learning more about the involvement of Google in helping investigators get these new images off the
Jake.
Google Nest Cam. Tell us about that.
That's right. These security cameras at Nancy Guthrie's home were made by Nest, which is a company that was acquired by Google back in 2014. A person familiar with the investigation tells me that today's breakthrough came in large part thanks to technical expertise provided by Google. Employees at Google were able to recover data from those Nest-made doorbell camera from that camera at Guthrie's front door. There were other Nest cameras at the home as well. We don't know if any video has been able to be obtained from those, or at least not yet. But the source tells me the recovery process took several days, and it was so technically complex that investigators didn't know whether it would be successful. Nest has not yet commented, and I know this revelation may raise privacy concerns since Guthrie's home did not have a Nest subscription into the cloud for backup recordings. Ordinarily, this would mean that the cameras were providing live feeds from the home, but not archived videos. However, somehow these technicians were able to find some material. FBI Director Kash Patel said today the government was able to work closely with, quote, private sector partners, in this case meaning Google, to recover the imagery. He said the video was recovered from, quote, residual data located in back-end systems. So far, Nest has not commented. This raises lots of questions about how it was able to get these images, but at least in this specific case, a big success for the investigators now that we all have these images, Jake.
Right, Todd, you've been talking with tech experts over the past few days. Walk us through why it likely took more than a week to recover these images from the doorbell cam, from the Nest Cam that ultimately was disconnected and I think taken from the house, likely by the intruder.
That's right, Jake. As we've been reporting, that camera was disconnected and then removed from the house. Now, motion was detected on the camera, but because, as Brian mentioned, Nancy Guthrie did not have the appropriate subscription for it, that video from that motion was not available. One expert, Dr. Pritak Satam from the University of Arizona, told us that if you don't have a paid subscription, the video just kind of keeps getting overwritten. Sometimes it's sent to the cloud only temporarily, but it's constantly being overwritten. And and so that might not have been available immediately there. I also spoke to Mark Rash. He's a former Justice Department prosecutor who focused on technology cases. He reiterated a lot of what Brian Stelter just said. He said when motion is detected, the Nest camera begins streaming video to Google's cloud, and then even without a subscription, as Nancy Guthrie apparently did not have one, this video data can be temporarily uploaded for real-time processing, and they can analyze it from there. A lot of what Brian just talked about there. So that seems to be, Jake, what took a few days for them to kind of get straight. You know, the camera's gone, the video's not available. They got to figure out whether it was overwritten, whether it's gone forever, and then they, of course, tapped into what Brian was just talking about, the Nest camera, and that seems to have provided them this breakthrough.
And Brian Todd, continuing with you, what other tools could help provide new clues for investigators?
Well, I'm told by experts that it's surveillance video, and it's not just, Jake, the surveillance video from Nancy Guthrie's home. I spoke to Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a forensic scientist from Jacksonville State University in Alabama. Here's what he had to say about a video that they're going to be taking from other sources. Take a listen.
So I think the bread and butter here are going to be ring cam, CCTV, anything that they can, kind of pull in. And they will have gone to, I would imagine, just about every residence up and down that street, and also places like churches, convenience stores, maybe a dry cleaner, anywhere where a car would have passed through that area.
And Morgan also told me that they're also going to be analyzing the data from the connection between Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker and her cell phone. That connection was severed in the early morning hours before her disappearance was reported, but they're going to still be analyzing some of that data. And Jake, if there is a payment made on Bitcoin, they're going to be analyzing that transaction as well. Experts tell us you cannot tell when a Bitcoin transaction is going on who it's being sent from and to, but at some point, if a Bitcoin transaction is made here, they're going to have, the person getting the money is going to have to try to convert the Bitcoin to cash. At that point, they're going to have to set up, go to a Bitcoin exchange. When they do that, it makes them a little bit more vulnerable to being traced. So let's watch for that.
This hour, chilling new images show a masked and armed individual outside Nancy Guthrie's home. Democratic lawmakers clash with immigration officials as they defend their mass deportation campaign, and President Donald Trump says he may block the opening of a key bridge linking Canada and Detroit. We begin with potentially important but also disturbing clues in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of the NBC News anchor Savannah Guthrie. The FBI today released pictures from a camera at the door of Nancy Guthrie's house, and they show riveting, even frightening images of an individual wearing a full face mask, gloves, a backpack. FBI Director Kash Patel says the person is armed, visible in that video, and, as you see in the video, tampered with the camera, trying to block its view, it seemed, on the morning of Guthrie's disappearance. It has now been 10 days since Guthrie vanished. Jake Tapper reports on how investigators are now hoping that those images released today could help crack open the case.
The FBI released 6 brand new still photos and 3 videos of a potential subject captured from the front door camera of Nancy Guthrie's home on the early morning she disappeared. Nancy Guthrie's daughter, Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, posted the video shared by the FBI and wrote, "Someone out there recognizes this person. We believe she is still out there. Bring her home." FBI Director Kash Patel had said it appears the individual tampered with the camera, but these photos and videos were recovered through residual data located in back-end systems. The FBI says the Bureau had been working over the last 8 days to recover any footage from Guthrie's home after the recording devices had been removed.
The reason why the break in the case was so significant today, with the Nest camera footage recovered from Nancy Guthrie's porch, is because it was thought that all that footage either did not exist or had been destroyed. And for the Nest cameras and Ring cameras and other security cameras of the houses around here, there is so much foliage like this that separates the houses from the roads and the houses from each other. None of it was any help at all.
Let's break down each of the photos. Here, in the first batch of photos that the FBI released, the first image shows a masked individual wearing gloves and appears to have a gun at the front of their waist. You can also see the straps of a backpack. The second image, the person appears to hold up a plant as if to block the camera lens. In the third image, the person is holding up their gloved hand to the camera. And the fourth image, the last from the first batch of photos the FBI released, you can see closer at the subject's eyes and mask. In a second batch of photos the FBI released, you can see the person's full body gripping what appears to be a gun at his or her waist. In another photo, you can see the build of the person right before the subject approaches the camera. The FBI also released video showing the person approaching the door with his or her hand on the holster. After spotting the camera, the person tries to cover it. As they turn around, you see a backpack with no label. Then the person walks back to the entryway and bends over to grab something and appears to tamper with the camera. In the last video, the person approaches the door, looking down. You can see the person's gait, how they move. The White House today also weighing in.
The president encourages any American across the country with any knowledge of this suspect to please call the FBI, who continue to assist state and local authorities who are leading this investigation on the ground.
Jake Tapper, CNN, Tucson, Arizona.
Joining me now is Scott Curtis, a former FBI agent. Scott, good to have you. I wonder, as you look at that video, how much potential identifying information for investigators is visible there? Size, weight? I imagine they're trying to make some estimates now as best they can.
Yeah, they're obviously doing that, but more importantly, this is powerful images for the public to hopefully call in tips there, especially family members, friends, close associates of this individual who would know who this person is, no matter how much that individual conceal their identity.
You think so, even with the mask and labels removed from some of the gear he was wearing?
Yes, I mean, people that know this individual well will know exactly who this is based on, like you mentioned, their gait, their size, the clothing they were wearing. In my career, if I knew somebody, if I had previously identified them, even if I saw them at nighttime, I would be able to identify them if I had previously known them.
That's interesting. A former retired police officer told CNN that in looking at this video, he saw someone who was likely an amateur, and for a couple reasons he cited. One, he said that the holster that this person was using was too big for the revolver that was in it. It was also in an odd place on the belt, but also just the way he attempted to cover the camera with basically like a handful of grass. I mean, would you agree as well that there was some amateur qualities to this?
Yes, clearly. I mean, you mentioned the gun, the holster. He's had no firearms training to begin with here, because anybody that had training would have the holster on the side of their body there. The fact that he was trying to cover up the camera initially before we believe the camera was removed from the doorway there just shows that he maybe had done some general casing of the location, but he was not intimately familiar with details of security systems and video cameras that may have been there.
Now, I'm just curious going forward from here, because they are continuing to give public messages via Savannah Guthrie and her brother and sister. Based on the content of that messages, or even Savannah saying in her video today that they believe their mother is still out there, does that indicate to you that investigators are in contact with the suspect based on these communications that we've been aware of to some of the news outlets locally?
I don't believe so. I believe that the release of all this video and still footage of this individual means that they have pivoted to another avenue in this investigation where they are being proactive and seeking the public's help with tips to try to identify this individual and to locate this individual. That's their primary focus right now.
Interesting. Finally, on the way this video was extracted, it seems to be pretty remarkable, because as we understood it, Nancy Guthrie did not have the service that saved, and a lot of us have, doorbell cameras, and there are services that kind of save the video or live stream it. She didn't have it, but it seems that Google, after several days, was able to extract it. Remarkable, it seems, isn't it?
It just goes to show you with modern technology how much of our daily lives is being recorded, whether we are aware of it or not. And luckily in this situation, even though the family may not have been aware of it, luckily it was recorded. And now this is very powerful evidence once we can apprehend this individual to be used to prosecute him.
The FBI has released images of a masked person on her doorstep wearing gloves, as you can see there. Authorities believe the person is armed and carrying a backpack or tools. The 84-year-old Guthrie has been missing now for 10 days. Her daughter, NBC's Savannah Guthrie, posted the images on her Instagram account, and she says, "We believe she's still alive. Bring her home." Our Josh Campbell joins me now for more. And Josh, you know, when I looked at these images, we all looked at these images, they're just absolutely chilling, right? Absolutely chilling for all of us. An individual tampering with Nancy Guthrie's camera. What do you take away when you look at the not just the photos, but also the video? What's valuable in them, you think?
Well, you're spot on in how chilling this is to actually see this suspect. They're coming up to the Guthrie family home. You know, before this video was actually located by the FBI and then released publicly, authorities were appealing to the public for any type of tips about what would have happened, but essentially doing so in the abstract, kind of putting it on the public to say, look, we want you to think, do I recall seeing something there around the time of her disappearance, maybe before, but this now so crucial to actually give them the image of what appears to be the subject in this case. There are a few takeaways that we have here as you look at this imagery. First of all, it appears that the person comes and has a firearm on this person just there at their front. But you also see that their hands are obscured, their face is obscured, their clothing is from head to toe. You know, criminals are sometimes smart, you know, in certain circumstances, and this could have been an attempt by this individual to try to prevent leaving behind any type of identifying information, such as a fingerprint, such as hair fibers or skin that could then be used for DNA testing. And so, again, that chilling to know that no one would come up to a residence dressed like that with a firearm unless there are sinister motives behind that. Now, the reason why we don't actually see on video Ms. Guthrie being taken away is because we know that the camera itself was taken by the suspect, but authorities were able to resurrect this data to try to get these imageries that were stored from the family security system. And then the last thing is, although the public is, or the law enforcement is now pushing the public to provide any tips, law enforcement is also working behind the scenes to analyze every single item on that individual right now. Everything from the article of clothing, the backpack, the firearm. We've seen in certain cases that if they're able to identify where certain items are purchased, they can actually go and try to canvass employees and try to determine, did you recognize this person buying it? Was there a form of payment? That's meticulous work, but all going on behind the scenes right now.
And we know that the camera was removed. You and I have spoken about this, and we were told by the FBI Director Kash Patel that these images, and I'm going to quote here, Josh, were recovered from residual data located in back-end systems. So if you're now the FBI or the sheriff, I'm guessing you might be getting lots of tips, right? Like you were saying, people looking at the clothing, people looking at mannerisms. Just how do you then pour through all that information coming in? I mean, with this flood of tips coming in? Well,
we know it's a great question. The FBI has surged additional resources there to Arizona because, as they mentioned, as you just mentioned, they would know that by putting this out there, that's also going to potentially lead to another influx of tips. And look, these tips can take various forms. Sometimes in these high-profile cases, you might have tips that are actually applicable, that end up being helpful. There's also another category where people who might just have good intentions and want to try to help, but the information that they're actually providing is not at all relevant to the case. And then the third category is oftentimes, unfortunately, you have people out there who just want to cause mischief or sow disinformation that flood tips with information that is completely wrong. And so it's a great question. That is why it's going to require so many resources by the FBI and local law enforcement to try to go through any of those tips. But, you know, we've seen in so many cases, it can just be one tip that then turns this case on a dime and sends them in the direction of where the subject, and hopefully Ms. Guthrie is, but they're looking for that important lead right now.
That somebody might recognize. If this was your brother or husband or son, and you had seen them do something like that before, and you knew they had a sweatshirt that was similar to this, you know, those are the kind of, any one of these little details is very small and not necessarily identifiable, but when you put them together, you overlay them, that's when someone who knows this person would look at some of these images and say like, oh my gosh, I think that's whoever. And really, that oh my gosh moment is what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and Andy, I'm just going to get in here and give you a little bit more about what the FBI director said about these images.
And out front tonight, the breaking news. Sheriff deputies and the FBI right now going door to door, canvassing the neighborhood where Savannah Guthrie's sister Annie lives. Now, it is important to remember that it was at Annie's home where Nancy Guthrie.
We have major breaking news as the Pima County Sheriff's deputies and the FBI have detained a person for questioning in the Nancy Guthrie case. That's according to what a law enforcement official familiar with the investigation is telling CNN tonight. And I do want to note that officials stress that this person has not been charged. CNN's Ed Lavandera is on the ground outside of Nancy Guthrie's home. And Ed, what more do we know at this hour? I know it's kind of bare bones, but what do we know so far about this person who has been detained?
Right. Well, this is a quickly developing situation, so trying to be very careful about how we report all of this out as this is continuing to unfold. We're monitoring as closely as we can, but as you mentioned there, the Pima County Sheriff's deputies and FBI have detained someone, a person for questioning only at this point in the Nancy Guthrie case, and that, as you mentioned, is, according to a source close to familiar with the investigation. And it's important to stress that this is all developing very quickly in the hours after FBI officials released these video images and still images of the suspect approaching the home here of Nancy Guthrie, which you see behind me in the darkness now. But you can see the video was taken from that front porch area. Incredibly dynamic video, as haunting as it is to look at. It was definitely something and a major piece of evidence that was going to generate a great deal of phone calls and tips as people kind of parsed what they were looking at, looking for clues as to who that person might be. And we do know in the hours that we have been covering and reporting on this today that there have been a large number of tips that have been coming into to authorities. And now this is an investigation that seems to be incredibly fluid, moving very quickly, as there is now someone detained for questioning, and we will await to see where this goes from here. But we do know that this is an incredibly active hour as law enforcement investigators continue the desperate search for Nancy Guthrie. As Savannah Guthrie said in her video yesterday, this is an hour of desperation, and I think everyone involved in this case right now feels that at this very moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed Lavandera, thank you for that. And John Miller is also joining me tonight, again, on this breaking news. And John, a person being detained, being questioned, obviously, as we noted, this person has not been charged. What else, or what are you looking into when you hear this, especially given this comes just a couple of hours after those images, those striking and frankly chilling images were released earlier?
Well, let's walk through it. I mean, first of all, it's a very significant development because this is the only time, at least that we are aware of, that a person has been detained or questioned in this as a potential suspect. So it could be an extremely significant development, or, as sometimes happens in these matters, they could interview this person, they could look into things, and it could go a different direction. But we're not getting to the main question, which is, if they have somebody detained and they're questioning them, where is the victim? So far, no sign of the victim that we're aware of in this development. So where could this go? As they take a look into this person, they would also be looking into, where does this person bed down? Where do they live? Where is their vehicle? Do they have a storage area? These are the kinds of things that, as this developed in the investigative path, they might likely obtain search warrants for these locations and go further into that. So we're at a pivotal moment, perhaps a significant moment, but it's too early to tell where this is going. What we can say is, while they're detaining this person and questioning this person, there's no indication that anybody's been charged. And that's investigators from the Pima County Sheriff's Office who have been on this from the beginning, and their FBI colleagues, both on this lead.
What's the standard, John, just for people who don't know, in terms of detaining someone to question them in a situation like this? Is it just, I mean, how much do they need to have to go on in order to take this step?
Well, I mean, they have to have enough to bring that person in. If the person is coming in voluntarily or staying voluntarily, that's one thing. But there is a process, an investigative process, where at some point somebody's not free to go, and that can only go so long before a person's charged. But this is a very recent development, and to be candid, we don't have enough detail on what they had to bring them in or to hold them to pull that forward.
Yeah. John Miller, I'll let you keep reporting. If you hear anything else, please let us know, and we'll come right back to you in terms of what this means. John Miller makes a great point there, that this is the first known time that we are aware of where someone has been questioned since Nancy Guthrie went missing in this way. Andrew McCabe is back with me, the former deputy director of the FBI. As you are looking at these images coming in, and they have someone detained, what kind of questions are they asking this person, would you imagine?
Well, it really depends on why this person's been detained. If we can assume that if they've been detained because the FBI believes that they are connected to these images, then they're going to start, is a very delicate process, because they likely cannot keep this person detained unless they, through the course of the conversation, develop probable cause. So they're going to be very kind of low intensity, rapport building approach to having a conversation with this person. And then eventually they're going to get to asking details about the classic, where were you on this day? Do you have an alibi for the night of, I'm spacing on the date here, it would have been Saturday night into
10
Sunday
days ago,
morning,
yeah.
right? 10 days ago. And so they're going to ask them all those sorts of questions. They'll start with all sorts of background questions. Where do you live? What kind of car do you drive? Where do you work? Because they want the substance for further leads to run down. And then eventually they will confront him with images of that person on the porch. At some point, if they don't develop probable cause to believe that this is their person, they're going to have to let that person go.
Well, how long could that be? What is that point?
You have a reasonable period of time to air out the evidence that you have, to ask questions about these images, to ask other questions that you think could lead to probative information. But it's not forever. You know, it could be as short as a few hours, depending on what's developed over the course of the conversation. Every time you get another fact that puts this person closer to being that image from the video, then you have a little bit more room to work with.
And out front tonight, the breaking news. Sheriff deputies and the FBI right now going door to door, canvassing the neighborhood where Savannah Guthrie's sister Annie lives. Now, it is important to remember that it was at Annie's home where Nancy Guthrie had dinner hours before she vanished. Now, this major presence on the ground is coming just hours after a major break in the Nancy Guthrie case. The first major clue since NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother vanished 10 days ago. So this is what happened. You're looking at the video here. The FBI came out and released this surveillance video from Guthrie's home. It shows an armed individual who is masked and is carrying what appears to be a gun on their waist. Now you can see them tampering with the camera before walking back to grab a handful of flowers from Guthrie's garden. Now, which the individual then used those flowers to try to block the camera lens. So you can actually see all of this happening. Now, the FBI says that they were able to retrieve these images from what they're calling, quote unquote, residual data from Guthrie's camera. Now, according to NBC News, the Guthrie family was shown these images, but they said they did not recognize the person. That is why the FBI and Sheriff's Office decided to post the images and video. And in a moment, we're going to speak to a facial recognition and AI expert who's going to break down what investigators can actually see here. Is this enough? Ed Lavandera, though, begins our coverage out front live in Tucson, Arizona. And Ed, a lot is happening as we're talking. We're talking about FBI and sheriff's deputies canvassing the neighborhood of Savannah Guthrie's sister Annie's home, and a lot seeming to be going on the ground where you are right now.
Yeah, you have to imagine that the new videos and still images that have been released by FBI investigators is generating a flood of tips and leads for investigators to chase down. We are outside Nancy Guthrie's home, and you can see there through the trees that arched a brickway. That is the entrance into the home, and that is the area where these video images came from. And that's also the area where investigators have said they found traces of Nancy Guthrie's blood there on the porch leading out to the gravel circle driveway as well. So a great deal of focus there on that particular area of the house. In our reporting over the course of the last 10 days, we also know that there were other cameras inside the home as well. Now, whether or not investigators have been able to piece together and cobble together other video images like what we have seen now released from that front camera next to the front door, we do not know yet. But it's also coming, as you mentioned, Aaron, off the top, that there's continued focus and law enforcement activity in the neighborhood around Annie Guthrie's home as well, where neighbors are saying that they've been talked to by investigators asking if they'd seen anything suspicious and asking if they could search their properties as well. And we know that that kind of work has also continued here in this neighborhood around Nancy Guthrie's home as well, where investigators have been canvassing and re-canvassing the area, asking neighbors if they've seen anyone suspicious, any vehicles that are suspicious. Once again, going back to people trying to get them to find videos during those crucial hours from Saturday night into early Sunday morning that might help them track down who this suspect is that we're now seeing for the first time on this video. Aaron?
All right, Ed Lavandera, thank you very much. And they go from literally saying no suspect, no leads whatsoever, to getting that video and putting it out. I mean, it is as big as a break as they can get. And everyone is here. In a moment, we're also going to be joined by a former member of the SWAT team in Pima County, Bob Krieger. He retired just 30 days ago after 25 years ago with the team there on the ground now. So first, Chip Massey, you're a retired FBI hostage negotiator. You see what's happening here. They are going door to door, searching properties of neighborhoods to Savannah Guthrie's sister's home, as well as Nancy Guthrie's home. What is happening right now?
Right. So they're following every investigative lead that they've got, right? Nothing is being left to chance, every stone being overturned. So when they go back to these properties, when they go back to do these other searches, and what will agree with me here is that they're getting investigative lead material from interviews, from talking to neighbors. That's going to point them in other directions. So they're going to double back and find what's there.
What do you think, Wally?
Absolutely, right on. He's right on the target. And also, they'll be going through everything, even the garbage in the neighborhood. They'll be sifting through that. And that's a very important part because they don't need a search warrant or anything to go through that. It's in a public place if they find something. But it's so important to take every little lead. And I must say that the FBI orchestrated a perfect timing with this, and I'll tell you why. This morning when I heard the FBI say that they're bringing agents to many of all their field agents, it's like the Mangione case. You know, people might see a little something out of that picture. Remember where they found in Pennsylvania at a McDonald's, someone found a little speck of information and brought it on. Someone might see throughout the United States something, and
that fits.
That fits, and the FBI want to get there extremely fast.
And it does feel as if things are moving extremely quickly in many ways right now with that breakthrough. Bob Krieger's with us right now, and Bob, as I said, you just retired from the SWAT team in Pima County days ago, and I know you spent 25 years working there. So how close do you think they are to a breakthrough?
With the video being released today and the still images, I imagine they're getting pretty close. There's a lot of information out there. I'm sure this is going to help. And what I do know is that the tactical teams have to be ready to go at a moment's notice. They've probably got multiple teams ready to go between us, the Pima regional team, the FBI HRT team, whatever information comes in, I'm sure they're going to be able to act as soon as they get the info where to go.
And so do you think, Bob, from everything, you know, when you're seeing this as someone who's from Tucson and spent 25 years in SWAT team there, right? I mean, you know this. So when you see what's happening and where they're searching around Annie Guthrie's home and Nancy Guthrie's home, you know, do you think this is somebody that they think this is all going to be right in those areas in terms of where they go?
I think it could be anywhere. The metropolitan Tucson area and then the desert areas around us is so vast. It's hard to say exactly where they'd be focusing on without any investigative leads. With that being said, my guess would be it could be anywhere. We go down to the border here in Pima County, so it could be anywhere from a shack down near the border to a house in the neighborhood. It's just so difficult to guess at this point.
And when you said those teams would be ready to go at a moment's notice, you know, how ready are they right now? When those pictures came out, was that sort of for them the, okay, we got to go, we're ready?
Yes, I'm sure they had standby teams ready to go, at least contingency teams to get out to any locations to start any prep that they need to do, and then usually they'd be supplemented by the full teams when they show up. But I'm very confident that they're ready to go.
And Bob, what do you think when you look at these images? You know, as a Tucson SWAT team professional, you look at the fact that the individuals seem to have a gun, a holster, obviously fully masked, but then using flowers to cover the camera right then. There are some things that sort of don't fit with being very prepared, at least to the layperson. What do you see there?
I would agree. My initial reaction was he didn't seem like a professional bad guy. Just the way he moved, as long as he was in front of the camera, the things with the flowers, the way he had the gun didn't appear to be the right gun for that holster. There were a lot of things that didn't make sense. From things that I've seen from home invasions that I've worked over the years, and there was just a lot of things that made it look like this wasn't a very sophisticated criminal, in my opinion.
And you know, Bob, as Bob is saying that, let me just ask you, Chip, do you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, the way he comes at this, he's trying to disguise his movement, the way he walks up to that door, right? He's hunched over.
And it does appear to be a he. I think everyone would be shocked if it isn't. That appears to be a man.
Yeah.